All right, everybody, let's get the show started. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Virtual Science Cafe. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining me. I am your host for our program. My name is Chris. I'm curator for the SECU Daily Planet Theater at the wonderful and inspiring North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. So glad that you could be here. Hope you're taking care, staying safe out there. And hey, let me know over in the chat and in the comments if this is your first Science Cafe program that you're tuning into, or if this is like your umpteenth cafe. And let me know how you found out about the program. I'm really curious to see where people are getting their information about the cafes, what excites you, what cafe topics you think are the most interesting. At the end of the show, I'll share a survey link with you so that you can actually give us some formal feedback if you like about the show. But this is also about learning from experts, getting their insights, knowledge, and expertise shared with us, and about figuring out what sort of things you're thinking about on our topics every Thursday night. So let me know in the comments what's on your mind. And as we go throughout the program, we'll take your comments and questions about tonight's topic and share them with our guest speakers and get their insight and knowledge on the sorts of things that you're thinking about in regards to our topic. Now, for tonight's show, we have some very special guests. I'll be introducing our first guest tonight, Alyssa Miserendino. Alyssa is an artist who looks and listens to science and nature, things we appreciate very much at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. And Alyssa creates opportunities for transformation through art. Alyssa now is working with the city of Raleigh and Raleigh Arts to develop sound art pavilions for the public to experience and enjoy. So as you are hopefully finding opportunity to get out a little bit and stretch your legs around Raleigh's green spaces and public areas, you may one day soon come across one of these sound art pavilions and some of Alyssa's work. Let me welcome to the show, Alyssa Miserendino. Hi, Alyssa.
Hi, Chris. Thank you very much for that generous introduction. I'm excited to be here tonight. I am a local artist in North Carolina, and I want to thank Connect Raleigh for this opportunity, as well as the North Carolina Museum of Natural Science for hosting this journey tonight with you. So if you have headphones, I invite you to put them on at this time if you don't already have them in. And when I share sound, I also invite you to close your eyes so that you can get a chance to interpret space beyond the narrow view of our vision. So I work out of the second bedroom shared with my daughter here, which is where I'm at. And inside I work with technology, which includes video, photography, sound editing, finances, bookkeeping, contracts, lots of grant writing, rabbit hole research, and all those organizational things that happen that artists partake in as small business owners. So if you have a local artist relief fund to donate at this time, that's always appreciated. Outside of my studio, I've been recording nature in the last few years, building installations and working with institutions such as UNC Chapel Hill, where I'm working on a mural commission for their medicinal garden called Plant Waves. And of course, the city of Raleigh and a project called Kwan Kwan, which I will talk about this evening with everyone. I work with corporations such as Arup that has helped me through several projects since 2012, and individual engineers that have made my crazy ideas come to life. So it really does take a village. But in my most recent work, in the last couple of years, I have been interested in sound. So I'm going to share my screen with everybody. So in particular, I've been interested in listening as a transformative act where the invisible becomes visible. So let me do a little arranging here. And Chris, just give me the okay that you can hear this at some point. Let's see. Is it coming in?
I'm starting to hear it, yes.
Okay, so we're going to leave it in the background for just a minute. So what you're listening to is a flock of horny fellas, as I like to tell. These are the brood 9 Magi cicadas that I recorded a couple weeks ago between Stewart and Meadows of Dan, Virginia. And they are the 17-year cycle Magi cicadas. So they're underground for 17 years, and they come up, and the males are the only ones that make sounds, and they look for a female to mate with, and then they die. And so when I speak of this transformation, I'm not talking about cicada-like transformation. I'm particularly interested in emergent transformation that creates something novel, that it's part of where it's parts that are a part of this system, they do this together and they don't do it alone. And I'm curious kind of what the ingredients are in a kitchen that create emergent transformation. And in particular, speaking about emergent transformation as metaphor. So when I envision this emergence of birth to something new, it's a system like an organism, and I don't mean like organism alive. And there's one of our males that has landed on one of my microphones in the background. I'm really talking about this metaphor to organize a complex system, the birth of systems, to patterns, to cycles, to communities, to consciousness, to even organization of viruses, which are kind of like this liminal thing. It's neither a living nor non-living thing. So you'll hear this male calling out. A female lands on my tripod, but she can't quite make it up. So I invite you to close your eyes. So emergent transformation is metaphor. So I've pulled up the etymology of transform and metaphor, a Greek word, the Greek, in particular, the Greek root of metaphor, and looking at pharine in the upper right-hand corner. And kind of thinking about the subtlety of this word, which is to carry or to bear, to support, of enduring, of also to give birth. And through sound, I want to kind of take you on this journey of listening metaphorically. So here is the sound of someone's voice in music that's seen visibly through a technique called cymatics. And this is a beautiful example of what sound is. It's excited or dancing molecules in a medium, whether that's air, a solid, or a liquid. And this is made by Jacob Adlington, who is a fellow artist and colleague, who you can find by Googling Journey of Curiosity. And with the thicket voice of Deadova, who records her voice on telluric energy lines around the globe. And this sound, like anything else, is energy, always moving, and it permeates everything. So the word cymatics is derived from the Greek word kyma or cyma, K-Y-M-A, meaning wave. And this physical process, and the word cymatics was coined by Hans Jenny, and I think he passed somewhere around the early 70s. And you can see here how sound organizes as patterns. And as you can imagine, if sound is transforming matter, what can sound do to our bodies?
Buona
And this infographic is sideways purposely. So not all sound energy is registered by our brains, but our body can still feel it. And so this infographic is kind of to show you how our brother and sisters in the animal kingdom, like how they hear compared to how we can register sound. And rather than saying here about how we register it, we can't close our ears, even if we're hard of hearing, deaf, or asleep. Yet our subtle body still feels sound. It still feels frequency. And sound energy obeys the first law of dynamics, thermodynamics, called the conservation of energy. So within this closed system of what we believe we exist in, all the energy is there. That amount remains constant, but it's continually changing form and infinitely changing matter. So this is kind of my metaphor for the concretization of sound. And this comes from a series called Resonance, and it's a sculpture piece. And this piece is made with acrylic medium, tissue paper, and acrylic ink that sits on a speaker for 5 days while a certain frequency is played through the speaker until the sculpture dries. And in this case, it's 18 hertz, which our human ears cannot hear or be processed by the brain, but our body can still feel it. And in psychology, concretization is the process where abstract ideas take form and representation through specifics as a result of my or our inability to generalize or think theoretically. And in terms of sound, I'm interested in how sound has a physical effect on the body. And this is where a potential metaphor of concretization of listening, I think about what does it mean to listen openly? So here I want to share an excerpt from a podcast called Sound Matters. And this is produced by Bang & Olufsen. And we're first going to hear before the narrator, Nina Kraus, and she's a professor at Northwestern University. And she describes the physical impact that sound has on the brain. It's not static, and we have the power to change this.
That doesn't usually happen in biological systems, that you can actually see the response of the nervous system in a way that it resembles what it is that is stimulating the brain in the first place. But here, the sound wave and the brain wave will physically resemble each other, and then I can take the brain's response and play it through a speaker, and you can compare, if you will. Here, we have a situation where the brain's response actually physically resembles the complexity of the sound that was delivered to the person. But the way in which our brain makes sense of sound is something that changes with experience. So our life in sound shapes our brain's response to sound. The music we make, the languages we speak, whether we have linguistic deprivation, whether we're getting older.
Everything you've ever heard and done in your life will make your brain quite unique in the way it responds to sound signals. You could say you get your own auditive fingerprint of a sort. So it seems that we do, in fact, maybe all hear the world in our own way, slightly differently. All depending on how our brains learn to hear sound in the first place, and on what happened to our hearing brains throughout our lives.
The juice of lemons makes fine punch.
Our brains adapt all the time. It's not a passive system you're born with. It changes. You can change it.
So if we have the power to transform how we hear, how do we listen based on experience? And so from left to right, I want to introduce some of these people and speak about how they speak about listening and sound. So in the upper left-hand corner is psychoanalyst Carl Gustav Jung, who had an overgrowth of bone in his ear that affected his hearing. And his grandson, Dieter Baumann, said he would listen to his patients as music. And then in the lower left, we have percussionist Evelyn Glennie, who is deaf, and she speaks about listening and hearing, and in particular touch. And she says, quote, "Hearing is basically a specialized form of touch. If you are standing by the side of the road and a large truck goes by, do you hear or feel a vibration? The answer is both. For some reason, we tend to make a distinction between hearing a sound and feeling a vibration. In reality, they are the same thing. It is interesting to note that in the Italian language, this distinction does not exist. The verb sentire means to hear, and the same verb in the reflexive form, sentirsi, means to feel. So deafness does not mean that you cannot hear, only that there is something wrong with the ears. Even someone who is totally deaf can still hear and feel sounds," unquote. And in the upper right-hand corner, we have composer Pauline Oliveros, who coined the term deep listening as, quote, "a way of listening in every possible way, to everything possible, to hear no matter what you are doing," unquote. And this way of listening is active again, is creative, not passive. And then trauma specialist and author Resmaa Menakem in the lower right speaks to listening to the human body, to the trauma that is inflicted by just embodying the color of the skin that we're born into. So he exposes the concretization of the body when listening is stagnant and not open, based on our experience, our birth, our upbringing, and by labeling white body supremacy as something we can listen to. Here he's speaking to patterns of trauma concretized physically, where he uses the metaphor of decontextualization as explanation.
For my Black body to be born into a society by which the white body is the standard is in and of itself traumatizing.
Right.
If my mom is born as a Black woman into a society that predicates her body as deviant, the amount of cortisol that is in her nervous system when I'm being born is teaching my nervous system something. Right? Trauma decontextualized in a person looks like personality. Trauma decontextualized in a family looks like family traits. Trauma in a people looks like culture.
So my screen's gonna be blank for just a minute, but I wanna talk about whether we're listening to energy of the cortisol that runs through our body and the energy of sound of a child laughing in joy. What does it look like to openly listen to uncertainty, to not know, and to revel in the contradiction of complexity, to lean away from that concretization and into the unknown via sound? So since I was 10, I've had a bit of an obsession with black holes. And as time went on, this love has grown deeper in my curiosity for dark matter, wave particle duality, the invisible, the liminal, and nonlinear time. So in January of 2017, the idea for a project called Ode to Heisenberg and Di Maria, which I will refer to here as HDM, arrived like a lightning bolt as I was sitting in silence. And I've been following its creation ever since. So Di Maria refers to the artist Walter Di Maria, who created two sound pieces in the 1960s titled Ocean Music and Cricket Music, which you can Google online. And Heisenberg refers to Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which I'll show a short video here by Henry of Minute Physics. And the uncertainty principle, as well as wave particle duality, or even this black hole singularity, I imagine is this metaphor for the potential connection of paradox. And through the corporeal embodiment of contradiction, I believe there comes an understanding and emergence of the new via existing in this open unknown, which is a state that can be difficult to remain in. But I really do revel in creating opportunities for this realm. So let me show you Henry's video to explain the uncertainty principle.
Quantum mechanics is weird, right? But did you know that some of its supposed peculiarities are not unique to quantum physics, but are just properties of waves in general? Take the uncertainty principle. It says that the better we know where a particle is, the less we know about how fast it's going. There's a limit to how much we can know. But this isn't just quantum weirdness, it happens all the time with normal everyday waves. Remember that the frequency of a wave is how close the wave crests are to each other. A low frequency wave doesn't have nearly as much oomph as a high frequency one. And the position of a wave is, well, where the wave is, mostly. So where exactly is a wave? It's spread out everywhere, right? Okay, but for a wave pulse, it's pretty easy to see where the wave is. So now that we know where the pulse is, what's its frequency? Well, a localized pulse doesn't really wave, so we can't measure the frequency of its crests. And that's the uncertainty principle in a nutshell. You can either know where a wave is or where it's going, but not both at the same time.
So HDM is immersive and interactive sound experience composed of sound I recorded in the Peruvian Amazon with the integration of human heartbeats. So here you're looking at how sound of the Amazon is, placed in space to experience it via this incredible software called 4D Sound. And I spatialized this 24-hour experience through a residency called the Spatial Sound Institute in Budapest, Hungary. And they foster beta testing and creation on their software. So it's a little hard to see right now. What you're seeing are these orbs, and these are the spatial delays in this room that you can experience it in. And in the center, there's a pink column that represents where and how the sound of thunder plays, as example. And how it's heard and felt with the body as you walk through the space from one side to the other. And then you see this green, let's see if I can get my hand over here, this green rectangle that's moving. And it says trill on it, and it's a name, that's what I named my frogs, because that's the sound they make. That's about halfway down the column of the thunder. And it's actually the floor plane of where visitors stand or they're invited to sleep. And I call it the magic carpet ride. And this represents, again, the shape and the sound of the frogs that sing at night for about 8 hours. So you don't hear them during the day, but this is where that sound is sent. So as visitors move through the sound of the Amazon, the sound of their heartbeat follows them via the nearest speaker. This system was a 42 speaker system, but it's compatible to any system that's set up. So that heartbeat is heard by means of a locationally tracked electrocardiogram or ECG. So for instance, if I'm on one side of the room and Chris is on the other side of the room, we hear our own heartbeats but to the closest speaker. But it's not until we walk towards each other that our heartbeats together become audible to one another. So some, after experiencing this part of the Amazon portion in particular, they've reported understanding nonlinear time or the infinite for the first time while experiencing HDM's 24-hour spatialized Amazon composition. And visitors enter the space for as long as they like, and as mentioned, they can sleep overnight. And through HDM, I'm interested in the impact of nonlinear understanding and research opportunities in health and epigenetics via sound as an energy system for human experience and transformation. In particular, a system akin to what's right underneath our feet, which is the largest organism in the world, and that's fungi. And again, it's this liminal thing, right? It's not an animal, plant, or bacteria. It's not quite a vegetable. It's like the internet, or it is like our neural network. And in other words, it's a system better described by Merlin Sheldrake, who has the best name. He's a biologist. He just came out with a book called Entangled Life. And there's a quote in the story called The Understory, written by Robert McFarlane, that I want to share with you. And what you've been seeing on the screen is footage from a documentary called Fantastic Fungi, which I would suggest you watch if interested. I've watched it with my daughter, and she loved it, and she's here tonight listening. Hey, girlfriend, I hope you're having fun. But Merlin, the magician, or maybe just Sheldrake, he speaks about fungi, and I love this quote. They annihilate our categories of gender. They reshape our ideas of community and cooperation. They screw up our hereditary model of evolutionary descent. They utterly liquidate our notions of time. So I want to share with you a binaural example. Again, if you have headphones, you'll be able to hear and understand the space of the Amazon. Again, this is only through the ears, so it's not quite the same as walking through the piece itself, but I invite you to close your eyes so that your ears can play center stage. So the last project I want to share with you is called Kwan Kwan, and it's named after the indigenous Kofan trickster spirit. And this is an image from a pamphlet book of Kofan legends called The Old People Told Us, and was handed to me by Randy Borman a couple months ago on my way into the Amazon on the border of Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia. And this gives you an idea of where we were. And it was, we were headed towards a lake called Lake Garzacocha. And I was headed in to record with Gordon Hempton, the audio ecologist and nonprofit founder of Quiet Parks International, and a fellow artist colleague and friend, Nick McMahon. And we were being led in by members of the Kofan, whom you can learn about at kofan.org, and that's COFAN.org. I myself was recording for a sound pavilion that's currently being designed and built in collaboration with the city of Raleigh, Tonic Design, and architecture students at North Carolina State University. And I want to point out, let's see if I can get my cursor over there again. Here we go. I want to kind of point out this infographic, which I love. And it shows the world, you know, the underworld up here and the upper world. But this is the part that, that I find so magical, which is this liminal zone. And the Kwan Kwan, the trickster spirit, they have these reversed values. Night is their day, plants are animals, and my favorite of all are stinks are perfumes. And throughout myths and history and even psychology, this liminal zone is such a beautiful place where you have these portals from like one side to the other. And in the Kofan, the Kwan Kwan travel between the worlds in these portals, and most often in whirlpools or in water settings. And in one of the stories, you know, the Kwan Kwan sticks his penis up from below up until the upper world. So they're definitely considered these tricksters, not of the normal patterns that we consider. And Persian philosopher Suhrawardi, he coined this term called Na Kaho Abad, which means nowhere land, a mythical but real place, an interworld. So again, this liminal space. And so this has been, you know, people have been writing about this kind of liminal zone for hundreds of years, or maybe even Henry Corbin, who was a philosopher, professor of Islamic studies, titles a paper he wrote called Mundus Imaginales. And he titles it in Latin purposely, but you can find this online. You can Google it and read about it. Or even I think of the Psychopomp, which is, when translated directly from Greek, is the conductor, right? So again, we've got this this reference to sound and music, and the conductor or guide of psyche. And our psyche is our breath, our life, our soul, our spirit, and often referred, the Psychopomp is often referred to an escort of the dead as well. So I like to imagine the energy of Kwan Kwan simply as a guide to a new energy realm, or in other words, what I like to call a big cosmic joke. So you can listen on my website to a conversation, an impromptu conversation with Gordon Hempton and myself, but I slept overnight on this boat to kind of do the test run for this piece. And I retell the story in this impromptu conversation about the dolphins surrounding the canoe I slept in overnight, which I didn't know about, but dolphins are associated with the energy of the Psychopomp. So I asked them to come protect me before I fell asleep, which I probably didn't fall asleep until 1 or 2 in the morning because I was so terrified. And Randy Borman of the Kofan came out to check on me on the next morning and told me that the boat was surrounded by dolphins. So while I spent the night in the canoe alone, thinking the breathing next to me I was hearing were the hungry caiman or alligators swimming nearby, it turns out they may have well been the Psychopomp dolphin trying to take me beyond the threshold of my own fear. So this piece was recorded again on the canoe, and like HDM, it's a single 24-hour recording session, and it's completely unobstructed by any human noise or aviation and electrical, which is just amazing. It's not a lake you can swim in. There's a lot of piranhas and anacondas. And so we bathed on kind of the banks instead, but this gives you an idea of what it looks like during the day. So the piece will play in a sound pavilion that will be built in Spring Forest Park in Raleigh. And the piece will be played opposite its day and night, which is different from HDM. When you walk into HDM, if it's noon, you're listening to noon. But here in the park in Raleigh, if you enter and experience the piece at noon, you're listening to midnight in the Ecuadorian Amazon. And what's interesting is these vessels of travel, the canoe, they become this resonating acoustical object for the sound piece itself. And in tradition of the Kofan, they burn their hand-carved cedar boats to waterproof them, which is slated for the design as well, along with little holes in the canoes in the bottom to symbolize and kind of act like stars. So when the day it's night. So this excerpt that I want to share with you now is taken between 2 and 3 a.m. And again, I invite you to close your eyes, and like a trickster, or what I like to call the cosmic joke again, emergence comes as the disruptor of the pattern, and at any moment. So here's my contact info, which you can then go on the website and kind of peruse more in depth on different projects. You can listen and watch more. There's a great documentary on sound and listening done by the Spatial Sound Institute. And I'm very interested in bringing HDM in particular to North Carolina as well, via permanent sound space created for experimentation, internships, and research in sound in the health world. So please feel free to reach out if this project or any other projects or any questions come to mind that resonate with you if we can't connect tonight on this call. With that said, I'm going to hand this over to Kelly McChesney, the Public Art Director for the City of Raleigh, who can speak more to the art programs and initiatives that the city has created. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you, Alyssa. That was amazing. I feel like I'm in a meditative state and now I'm going to talk business with everyone. So give me one moment and I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Is that coming across to everyone? Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you everyone, and thank you, Alyssa. I'm Kelly McChesney, I'm the Public Art Director for Raleigh Arts. And I wanted to tonight kind of run through some slides. I know we're getting short on time, so I'm gonna try and go a little bit faster, but I wanna give a little bit of an overview of what, of what Raleigh Arts does. First, I did wanna mention this one phrase where Raleigh Arts is a community connected through arts and culture, where every person is empowered to lead the creative life they envision. And this statement, it comes straight from the Raleigh Arts Plan. I mentioned it here because at the beginning of the presentation, because I think it gets to the point that the health of our creative ecosystem is a partnership. Everything we do at Raleigh Arts is a collaboration with our community organizations, neighborhoods, individuals, institutions, and of course, our artists here. So just quickly, we have kind of a few big buckets that we do in Raleigh Arts. We have the Pullen and Sertoma Art Centers, community programming, arts partner programs, municipal collection exhibitions, and the public art program. And that's my little piece of the pie where I live. All of these programs and projects have the goal of expanding the reach of arts across Raleigh. So just to start off, the centers, they offer beginning, intermediate, and advanced art classes and art workshops, summer camps for preschool, youth, and teens, and their classes are year-round, open to all ages and abilities. I will say Pullen Art Center is currently under renovation, but it's planned to reopen in 2021, and I know that we're very excited about that. As far as programming goes, some of the things I know that Belva Parker in our office does is the Piedmont Laureate program. This is a partnership program, as everything you will see is. It's a program that's supposed to build a literary bridge for residents to come together and celebrate the art of writing. When we say art, there's lots of different art forms that we need to work with. We also just this year have started the Neighborhood Arts Funds. And this is a new program launched to partner with neighborhoods in Raleigh who want to use our work to better define their neighborhood identity or sense of place. But it also is kind of a support in bringing the community together. Some of these examples is that it can be a project for a community event, workshops, or even public art. Another critical program is the Arts Partner Grants Program. As I mentioned in the first slide, these partnerships are critical to providing services for Raleigh's widely diverse communities. We can't do everything. We're a small staff in our little office, so we depend on arts organizations in the city to do a lot of the work for us. The efforts not only ensure economic vitality, but they also provide a foundation for our creative ecosystem and a unique sense of place. Some of these, the images you'll see are from the African American Cultural Festival, First Night Raleigh, the NC Museum of History's American Indian Celebration, and SparkCon, and also the International Festival. So we also partner with organizations who serve the entire city. You know, these are a lot of theater groups, musical groups, and they are housed in Northwest Raleigh, Southwest Raleigh, all throughout. I did want to mention also accessibility and access in the arts. You know, partnerships like the one that we have with Arts Access have been instrumental to leading accessibility in the arts. They've been vital to helping us understand what we can do better to be more inclusive, but also they help other artists and organizations understand how they can make their events and spaces more universally accessible. The image to the left shows the Beam robot. This robot came and met with us at the Universal Access for the Arts Day a couple of years ago that Sarah Corin in the Grants Department put on. This robot gives tours of museums and galleries for people who cannot be there in person. So we also have the municipal collection and exhibitions. I think there are over 600 pieces in the municipal collection. The city maintains this collection for North Carolina artists and creates exhibitions in various locations throughout the city. It's part of the education component, but also support for our local artists. While there are several places where our work is on exhibit, the two most prominent locations you might see are the exhibitions at City Hall, right outside of Council Chambers, and across the street from the Go Raleigh station downtown is a fairly new exhibition space called Block 2. And this was a collaboration with Raleigh Arts and artists who work mostly in digital media. Kind of the point with that is the changing videos will aim to expand a viewer's notion of what visual art is and introduce the community to new artists, ideas, and experimental mediums. So now we get to public art, where I live. There's so much crossover with all of our programs, but I wanted to dig in a little more deeply into public art, as this is one of the reasons we're all here tonight together with Alyssa. I won't get too much into the philosophy of public art, but I'll talk a little bit about the subcategories within our program and why we believe these collaborative projects are important. So the Percent for Art program, this is usually always the biggest part of any public art program. It is for ours right now. It's an ordinance that calls for 1% of hard construction costs of city construction projects to be retained for the addition of public art. I think this program is important for many reasons. There's aesthetic, creating or reaffirming unique identity and bringing the community together. Hopefully it makes people think, and it's also a way that we can kind of share our history. This last part has become extremely important, especially in certain areas of Raleigh where our history has not been widely recognized. And these projects can tend to be a very intimate collaboration with the artists and the community. In community engagement meetings, we often have difficult conversations and explore ideas together. One of the questions we like to ask is, what do you want your neighborhood to feel like? And the end result of this work can be seen as a collaborative effort rather than an artist's unique expression. So instead of just being the artist doing what they do, it's really collaborative. A couple examples you'll see here on the right are the Chavis Community Center and also a piece that's upcoming for the Duke Energy Performing Arts Center. Our temporary program is fairly new, but we think it's gaining a lot of strength. It's a great way to actively engage local artists and the community partners because it can be so flexible and mobile. Through this program, we have a greater chance to work with artists inside our own communities, more local artists, and to share their artwork with the public kind of outside the traditional means of the gallery walls. The artwork can also be found in unexpected locations, such as a sound installation in a grove of trees or projection mapping onto historical structures. What you see in the top right is projection mapping onto the side of the St. Agnes Hospital. This program, the temporary program specifically, is really about bringing out the true artistic practice of experimentation and healthy disruption into unexpected environments. The projects tend to attract more viewers, participants, and engage more people in conversation. So we see it as a very useful tool. One of the methods for temporary public art, I have to kind of give a shout out and recognition to other city departments who work with us to provide opportunities for artists. Some of these integrated artworks go into public facilities, such as our bus shelters, sidewalks, signal boxes, and more. We've worked with stormwater on storm drain projects, and the Department of Transportation we do a lot with sidewalk murals and signal box wraps. And transit, we're doing a project called Together Raleigh. We started in 2018 and are continuing it right now, but it's artwork that will be wrapped on some of the new transit shelters. And to the right, you'll see this is actually an image from Shannon Newby, who made a sculpture out of pool noodles for our seasonal pools. So Seek Raleigh is a program that we started in 2019. We began testing out an artist-focused program. We call it Seek. And I say it's artist-focused because instead of asking artists to do a project that may already have a theme or a goal, they were invited to propose public artwork that they wanted to do and they wanted to share with the public. As artists are interdisciplinary in nature, they're exploring the blending of artistic practice, whether it be painting, performance, music, video, or sculpture. And as you can tell from Alyssa's performance, artists are very collaborative and interdisciplinary. For the first year, and you'll see a picture that was by Michael Williams' performance at Dix Park, we focused the work on Dix Park and asked artists to do site-specific installations there just to test it out and see how it worked. This year, we opened it up into all parks throughout the city so that we could really spread it out. Unfortunately, because of the time we're in now, we had to ask the artists to rework their ideas to be shared through digital means. And they did. And I'm just always in awe of how artists are and how they can quickly respond and adapt to any situation. I'm really impressed by the artists in our community. And I'll just say one more thing about this image. So if anybody went to the North Carolina Museum of Art talk they had digitally recently, he talked about this specific piece, which explores the notion of ownership of Black bodies in relation to the history of the park as a plantation, but it also makes people think about how this idea of ownership is played out today. So it's a really beautiful performance. You can find some online. Just one other example from Seek. This was a sound installation by Jennifer Bonner, Peter Kay, and Lynn Rhodes. I've put their website up there so that you can listen to it. But again, this was this idea of disruption into an area, kind of giving you something, an unexpected piece of joy or peace to listen to when you're in the woods. So we started thinking, about artists and how to get them to collaborate more with technology and other disciplines. As a part of a city initiative to create opportunities to bring artists and technology together, we collaborated first with neon artist Nate Schaefer. He created hundreds of neon lights that would hang from a tree in Dix Park, and they would light up in response to musical compositions using Moog synthesizer technologies. So we were able to play with about 17 musicians who would go and take their turn on the technology, and that was a really fun way to try out this new project. From there, we ended up working with OMI. This was a collaboration between Raleigh Arts, the St. Aug's University, Envision St. Agnes, and the NCMA, and a dozen of local artists. And again, this is the second time I've mentioned St. Agnes. For those of you who don't know, this building was built in 2009 from stones quarried from the St. Augustine's campus. It was the second home of the hospital, which ran from 1896 to 1961. And it was known in the community as the Healing Place, serving the African American community for 65 years and providing nurses, training, and medical care. We started working with them because the Envision St. Agnes project wants to utilize visual and performing arts to honor and revitalize this important Raleigh landmark. I think a lot of groups are looking at art to do this, to bring recognition and some historical importance to areas. What's interesting about it is the group OMI they first developed this idea. They developed an app called Tag Tool, and they were asked to collaborate with musicians and a high school to create an animated backdrop for kind of a musical concert. And when they first did this, they had kind of cheap projectors and cut out pieces of paper, and they would basically put the paper in front of the projectors to do almost like a puppet show. And after that, they were like, there has to be a better way. There has to be an easier way. So they actually went and developed this app. So you can draw onto an iPad, and it will, you can make it animate live. And then with that, they did projection mapping onto this building and invited artists to come in and play with the tool. So you'll see here, this is an image of Tarish Pipkins, who is a puppeteer in the area. And as he's performing, the artists are performing in the background, doing digital drawings of his work. And with this project, we brought in storytellers, musicians, spoken word artists, and visual artists. I'm just going to go through a couple pictures because I think lots of pictures of this project because I think it's worth it. But this one project was local artists Andre Langray and Lincoln Hancock, and Finn Cohen worked with an amazing local actor, Philip Bernard Smith, to use the technology and create a large-scale multimedia performance about Jack Johnson, who was the first Black heavyweight champion of the world, and he died at the hospital. So they did this piece kind of in remembrance of him. And of the time that it was then. This image is, again, of Tarish Pipkins on the left, and on the right is Jamal Karam. He's a storyteller from the North Carolina Association of Black Storytellers. And here, just some images. We have Dare Coulter, who is working, you can see her working on the app as she's creating for the projection mapping. And I'll just go through really quickly and show you some of the works that the artist came up with. And this is Victor Knight and his son, Sean Knight, and their piece. And they worked on Halloween. And Harriet Hoover, who's a local artist and professor at Wait Tech. And that's her piece. And then lastly, we couldn't get away without showing the St. Agnes babies. These are people who were born at the hospital, and there are many. So that we spent a night going through the images. There was a local photographer who took pictures of as many people as he could find. So that leads me back to Alyssa. With those past few projects in mind, kind of it leads us to ask a couple questions. So how do we utilize our resources to create more opportunities for collaboration like this? And how do we enable more cross-disciplinary collaboration for artists? And this is something we're thinking about with the city initiative, and everyone in the arts community, I think, is thinking about. Alyssa mentioned this project that she's working on with us now. I just wanted to go ahead and reference the website again, RaleighArtsSoundPavilion.com. And then I've put in here images of some of the student designs. I wish we could flip through and go through them all together, but please go and visit the site and you're welcome to look through them. All the students, they went through multiple iterations of designs and were very affected, I think, by Alyssa's work and her travels and just her philosophy. So they really thought about that and put that context into their work, which I was excited about. So with all of this, I think the point is that we need the help from the community. We have to partner in every way to make something happen. So from individuals and businesses alike, we need your help. We have a citizen initiated program, and this is kind of one way we try to encourage active participation in creating our city's identity. We want to reduce the barriers so that people can feel that they can be a part of the community responses and be an active part of our community, expressing our values and shared messages of hope, I hope. But we do have a program, so if anyone wants to do any kind of public art or temporary public art or performances, we help them through that process. And in response to that, when you think about these partnerships, we also have to be responsive to the current climate. And I think with the recent protests, many businesses, artists, and individuals really wanted to use this opportunity to express themselves. They wanted to show support and try and create a sense of unity around our community. So we're acting as a support figure. Raleigh Arts is acting as a support figure in these efforts and partnering with organizations and artists and businesses just to try and document this time and bring a historical context to the response efforts from the protests. And again, this project, lots of businesses did it on their own and took the initiative to do it on their own, and artists, but this specific project that we're working on is with the Black on Black project and the Raleigh Murals project. So with that, I would love to just go through, if you haven't been downtown, a couple of the images, just to share them with you. I'm almost through. So to end, when creative activity is happening in large and small ways throughout the area, it's surprising the ripple effects and benefits that we get, even for those who don't directly participate. Some of the benefits are in how the communities come together, and a vibrant arts ecosystem with music, storytelling, creative message-driven work, and community art centers means more people coming together to share these experiences and ideas. But there's also the benefit in supporting our economic vitality. More arts mean more energy and life in a community, more tourists, appeal to attract others, and very importantly, the opportunity to discover and innovate together. So Raleigh has historically supported the arts and enjoyed benefits of all these ripple effects. And I think we should be proud of what we've built and take responsibility for keeping our investment going. Thank you.
Thank you both. Alyssa, thank you. Kelly, thanks for being here as well and sharing with us what's happening and going on in the city. So much to think about. Okay, I'm going to remind everybody, leave your comments, questions in the chat. We're going to take a few minutes and get to those. Let us know your thoughts, what you thought about some of the artistic pieces that we saw and listened to, and any questions that you have for our guests. We'll grab those out of the chats and out of the comments and pose them. Alyssa, I am very curious about some of these outdoor sound installations and the sort of practical, technical side of actually building a 24-hour recording in an outdoor space.
Okay, I have this incredible habit of forgetting to unmute myself, which we did right before we signed on tonight. It's interesting you asked that, Chris, because for the last couple of days, I've been kind of calling companies and trying to figure this out. This is actually my first time that I'm doing a piece that will exist outside in the elements. So there's all different ways, but we are working together with the city of Raleigh, and they've been incredible at, you know, figuring out how to put certain elements in a structure, in a park structure that may just be like, you know, a utility building, and then being able to run electricity and wires to the piece itself. So then it just depends on what's waterproof and speakers or sound generators. There are these awesome things called transducers, and they can turn any substrate into a speaker, glass, fiberglass or drywall, and wood. So these are all things that we'll experiment with in Tonic Design's studio in Raleigh, and they are the architects and builder and design build. So we'll have to still figure that out.
And listening to that final recording, just sort of being in a rainforest and listening to that environment, I, as a naturalist, found myself even sitting here in my home studio wanting to call back to some of the creatures, because when I sit outside of my own home and listen to frogs and crickets and birds, I often try to mimic and imitate them. I think because I want to call them in, like I want them to get close, and I want to see them, and I want to identify them. did you experience any of those sorts of, I'll say, compulsions, trying to get so many hours of recordings surrounded by all of this wildlife?
Not necessarily while recording, because while recording, you can't make a sound, you can't move. So sometimes I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and hike into the forest scared shitless because there's big cats
Definitely,
and other animals. But I was there with two other artists, right? So we would say, hey, did you hear the sound? And the only way to explain it is to make the sound yourself. So a lot of our conversations late at night or early in the morning before we started our day working. I mean, that piece I shared at the end is, I still to this day have not found out which bird that is that goes wah, 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 wah. So we use it, like as an artist, we use it to communicate to one another the sounds that we hear, but I remain silent when I'm listening.
I assume so, but trying to commune with nature is sometimes overwhelming. At least it is for me. Let me get to some of the questions that are here in the comments. Roy says that Bernie Krause's. Are you familiar with natural soundscapes recorded by Bernie Krause?
Yes.
Okay. Roy says Bernie Krause recording natural soundscapes influenced how the Museum of Natural Sciences in Raleigh cast its soundscape amid the dioramas. Did Bernie's work influence any of your approach?
I'd have to say any field recordist, whether it's Bernie Krause or Gordon Hempton, and even artists that are just working with sound in general, such as I think Camille Narant, who works with harmonicas. It's a glass blown thing. So it goes beyond the spectrum of just field recording. It really is about sound in general. But for whatever reason, in the last couple of years, it has been, in particular, the Amazon, because I think we have to be cognizant of caring for that part of us, which is the Amazon.
Allie is asking, what was making those calls in the Kwan Kwan recording that sounded almost like a man saying, ha? Is that a frog or a toad? Do you know?
It might be a frog. There were frogs in the recording too. I would love to ask her to make the sound so I'd know.
I have to, well, I did post the link to your website to that particular page. I didn't notice if the recording is there or not, but maybe they can find more information about it there too.
The recording is there, and I'm always happy to talk to anyone who's curious.
Excellent, excellent. Let's see. Penelope has commented. Penelope really enjoyed the program. This was fabulous. And I agree, Penelope, the sounds were intriguing. And Penelope wants to hear more. Penelope didn't know that there was so much going on for art in Raleigh. Kelly, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one issue that we always come up with is how to get the information out to everyone. I think we're trying to do better with that, but you can find us if you just Google City of Raleigh, Raleigh Arts, and you'll find our webpage. We also have a Facebook page and an Instagram that's also Raleigh Arts. And that's really where we can get out fast a lot of the information we have going on. We do have, as far as Seek is concerned, that I talked about for this year, we have upcoming digital programs that you can listen to. We just finished one on vital health, and then we finished one on Juneteenth last week. So I would invite you to please go and find those sites and join us in the future.
Alyssa, are there any more exciting plans for science and nature related work soon?
I don't know. I always bring my recorder, and I'm not going very far these days unless I'm going camping, which has been great, but no plans. Just like Kwan Kwan happened because I was handed that pamphlet by Randy Borman. I kind of let the world present to me, hopefully what will happen next.
Well, thank you both very much for being here and sharing the excitement and enthusiasm that you have for your work. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah.
And I want to extend a very special thanks to the folks with Connect Raleigh, who partnered with us to put on this presentation tonight and to put on such a great show. Many thanks to all of the people involved in that effort. And I look forward to many more cool collaborations and partnerships working with Connect Raleigh. I think we've got some interesting stuff coming up in the works in the future. And since the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, in my biased opinion, has such an impressive footprint in downtown Raleigh, it's so great to be able to work with you all and bring the excitement of what's happening in the city of Raleigh to our museum audiences as well. So again, thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for tuning into the show tonight. I hope that you enjoyed it. I think that you did. I dropped some links to some of the different sites that were discussed in the program, as well as Alyssa's website. So make sure that you check out all the cool resources there. Visit naturalsciences.org. That's the museum's website to figure out and learn more about the programs that are coming up in the future, our pre-recorded videos, do-it-yourself science at home projects, and more live events that are going to be coming up. Next Thursday night, July 2nd, we'll be meeting a local ornithologist, Deja Perkins, who's a graduate student at North Carolina State University and a co-organizer of the Black Birders Week movement. So you don't want to miss that. We're going to have a great conversation and learn a lot about that movement that Deja's been a part of. So if you want to know what's happening when we're going live here on YouTube again, and make sure you don't miss anything, like the video, this one, subscribe, click the bell to get notified. That way you know what's going on when we do cool and exciting stuff here on the internet, just for you, our museum fans. Thanks so much, and take care. Stay safe. Bye, everyone.